Good afternoon, Ann. How are you?
Hi, Matt. I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. For this topic, and maybe what our listeners might want to hear is the aspect of politics and business. As an
Mm,
email that came across from one of our prospecting for the podcast for guest speakers. Politics was involved, and that got me thinking in terms of I am generally neutral in a lot of conversations in business, even if like maybe I have a customer that is openly conservative or openly liberal or openly whatever else.
yeah.
I generally be like, okay, that's your thing. I'll do my thing, but I don't really judge based on that. But
So in
sometimes
politics and business, you try to stay neutral in the middle.
generally neutral, right? At least like publicly. I don't think there's, for me, I think politics is like kind of like it's dirty laundry from my perspective, but I understand it from the other end, which is there's a lot of businesses that get customers because they're political,
Correct.
right?
Well, there's a
But
lot of businesses that are founded because of politics.
right.
So the whole founder story is based in politics.
I mean, like it depends on the business, right? If
Right.
I know like a company that does a company based in Florida. I don't want to go too much in detail, but he openly is like pro Trump, openly, and then I have another customer in Seattle, and they're like pro anti Trump. I don't know what they're from the liberal side. I don't know if they're backing anyone, but like they're
Sure.
pro against Trump, right? It's like it's either for or against. So it's like how do I have both those customers, both of them are paying customers. What do I do
Right.
with it, right? So
Right.
why? So there's no incentive for me to say, let me put my public opinion because that's going to hurt one or the other.
Sure.
And to be honest, I don't even want politics to be involved with my business. I don't want, my employees, we have free speech in our Slack channels. Like, go ahead, say whatever you want.
Hmm.
Just don't bring it to our customers because that's when revenue's lost. And to be honest, I'm in the business of making money, not the business of losing money. So
Right.
my priorities are around making money. If I'm going to involve politics, it better make more money than not involving it, or vice versa. So
Right.
that's kind of my stance on it. But like,
Yeah.
the email raised the question of um, when when do you have to pick a side?
Exactly. Right. And when does it benefit you to pick a side if you have to, right? Because that was the other part of the question was, do you even have to pick a side? And to engage in business with others, do you have to have a side? And can you be truly neutral or, agnostic with politics? I don't know. It's an interesting topic. I'm glad we're getting into it today. For me, I align personally more with you of being in the middle. I've definitely been, called and self-proclaimed a libertarian, more in the middle. But I don't even know if they're in the middle anymore. But it's like, at what point do you look at all of the climate going on, the political climate? It's now a humanitarian climate. It's, talking about lives, and it's talking about humanity as a whole. And it's such a heated climate. Politics or not, it's just being performed by politicians that at some point you have to have a
And the
voice
media. I
in.
mean, the media
Yeah.
and the politicians, they kind of go hand in hand.
Right. Right. And I know, and it put me in check to think, well, how do I operate in business with regarding politics? I definitely am the same. I have clients who are openly, have been pro-Trump and openly anti-Trump, but it's not even a person thing. It's liberal, Republican,
Right.
Democrat, libertarian, all in the middle. But at the same time, my business practices do not rely on much on politics and political policy to exist, right? For me to make money, as you say, like I want the business to make money. So that doesn't really heavily rely on politics or the political climate. So I choose to not engage in political chatter if my clients get into it. But I have clients all over the board. I have clients in the queer community, in the transgender community. I have clients in the religious community and the faith-based community. And I would say, regardless of all of them getting along, where I have to sit in the middle is I'm curious and open about everyone's human experience. And that's just me as a person, as Anne.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the work that I get to do, it involves being open to a lot of different viewpoints, whether I agree with them or not. And if I am being challenged on having an opinion in a certain space, I would want to know why. What does
Right.
my opinion add to either the business climate that we're doing, the work, the discussion, and why does it matter? And that answer is going to guide how much or how little I interject my political opinion into business, because I need to know what the other person is going to gain from knowing where I stand.
Well, if you're being challenged, I would probably say that whatever conversation that's happening, it probably dies at that point, unless you want to continue the conversation. Because if you're being, it's like if someone challenges me, like I look at that email and be like, okay, it's probably a much lower chance that is going to happen. Just because of where I stand politically, I might be middle, but just because I have traits that are on the other side, I just have a gut feeling that person's not going to like that. It's like, oh, that's fine, not a big deal.
Right.
But that, to me, that ends it, right? So if I'm challenged, I'd just be like, well, my business philosophy is dirty laundry shouldn't be part of the business, and and I treat politics as dirty laundry. If we can't get a deal because I'm not aligned with you politically, okay, I am totally cool with walking away. There's there is a very large pool of customers. I want to work with people who want to make money. That are not focused on politics, right? I don't want to work with people who only make money from politics, because I don't think you can go both ways. I think you actually have to choose, right? If you're going to say, I'm going to be political, make money, but then like to another person, you're going to be neutral, it doesn't quite make any sense there, because then it's not very, I'm not sure if honesty is the right word, but your integrity of where your beliefs are basically just fitting the sale, not who you're grounded with. Right. So I don't want to work with those people anyway.
Right. You're either all in or nothing. So if it is a political climate for you and your business, everything has to be.
And I do believe people can change, but then be all in on that change too, right? I know folks who were Democrat and then changed to Republican. And I know folks that were Republican changed to Democrat or went to independent. Right. Yep. So that's cool too, right? You'd be like, okay, for 10 years ago, I was this, I said these things. I don't really believe them anymore. It's like, that's cool. I mean, we all evolve. I mean, every 5 to 7 years, I think we all kind of shed our old belief system and grow a new belief system.
Right.
And that's cool too. But I think in the moment, I don't think you can just be choosing all these, directions, based on who you're working with. I think it's wherever you're based on. So like from that email, okay, if that person is heavily liberal, this is probably no shot where anything I talk could be like a hostile, conversation. I don't want to go in that. It's like, I'm here to make money. I don't really care about people's belief systems really too much. I mean, I know it's a big part of everyone's journey, but I'm more interested in people, and how they persevere. It's very interesting. If politics involves perseverance, great. I'm not going to challenge that. I don't want people to think my beliefs interject that. I'm just, I wouldn't even bring it up. I think people who try to poke the bear and be like, let's, I want to hear more of your beliefs. And I think that's also a wrong attitude too. So that's why politics is super nasty for me.
But on the flip side of that, I am interested if politics is shaping someone's founder story and why they created something. I am fascinated by that conversation, because I want to know why, and I want to know a little bit more about it. The reason why is, personally, I try not to dip too much into politics unless I'm forced to, which recently we've been kind of forced to. It's everywhere. But I really try to not inundate myself with it, because honestly, I don't enjoy it. I don't care for it. Kind of like you, I do think it's dirty laundry. I don't love it. So for me, I am fascinated by that. If someone does have a heavy political opinion in work that's framing their work, I want to know more about it from a curiosity standpoint. But I will say the recovering people pleaser of me, I used to be so wishy-washy and not stick to what I was thinking or believing at the time based on who was in front of me. And so that included politics. So it was very much like, oh, I don't know. I very much would align with you on this conversation and maybe not that, because I just didn't have my own viewpoint, because I was thick in that people pleaser mentality. And as a recovering people pleaser, I really don't give a shit. I'm kind of in the middle saying, listen, there are going to be some policies. If we go back to policy and issues, I am more right. And then there are other policies and issues, especially socially, I'm more left. So, I'm a small business owner. I'm a parent. I've had children. I am a woman of faith, but I've ditched all of those evangelical Christian religious rules that we've talked about. But at the same time, I'm coming at you saying, I'm so pro-choice, and that is a very left belief system. But I'm, as a woman, as a mom, I've had miscarriages. If you take away the primary healthcare function of, women's healthcare, regardless of where they are in their journey of having children, it's dangerous. So for me, I want all of those things at the disposal for other women. Just because my choice maybe is anti-abortion for that circumstance shouldn't be yours. So
this is why I'm not a big fan of politics, because in Texas, right, I think they banned abortion or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's such a stupid thing to go out of your way. Just
right?
let people do what they want. Stupid. But they do it because it gets votes, right? Yeah. And this goes into dirty laundry. At the end of the day, it's a whole pyramid of things. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, everyone does this. So eventually their party of choice has a chance to be the governing power. Yep. That to me is just so, it's like a metagame, right? And I'm not here to play another game. The game of business is already really hard.
Yes.
And we got to play the game of politics.
Then you got politics in business, and both games are destructive.
And you got your own life, right? And there's so much going on. So, 100% agree that there's a lot of stupid policies out there, but I know why they happen, and that's actually one of the reasons why I leave it out of business, because I might openly say, I am pro-choice as well, but then I have customers be like, I can't work with you because you said that. It's like, oh, okay, right. Go find a company that you think aligns with you then. I'm not here to stop you. You do what you want with your money.
Did being pro-choice need to come in the middle of the work that we're doing? I mean, right. Almost none of the work, I can't even think of a situation in the work that we are doing as an AI website growth tool and, a branding firm would need these belief systems to exist between us to do solid work.
A lot of it comes into the metagame. So I'll give you an example. I have plenty of customers that are donors to political whatever their super PAC they donated to, whatever. Mm-hmm. Right. So they need to continue that trend, which ultimately if they're the controlling operator of the business, they're going to continue that with probably their vendor list too. It has nothing to do with whether that company is used, it has nothing to do with the politics of that. It's just more or less alignment with their overall mission of politics. So I think that's really what it comes down to. I've seen it both ends.
See, for me personally, I don't believe in cutting people off if they fund different things, if they are left or they are right and they give money certain places. I that's not enough for me to say I won't work with you if we can connect on a human level and have a good relationship. For me, I just don't feel like that is a qualifier.
Well, they would argue politics is even more human than anything, which I can probably agree, because politics is a series of societal issues. It's actually more human than anything you can get. So
that's true.
You can say on the topic of being human, that is the topic of being human. So what are your alignments then? Sure. And let's see what your belief system as a human is, and let's see if we're compatible, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that argument can go on infinitely.
So at some point, I guess it would just be in the human characteristics of, if your political beliefs allow you to operate in a way that you don't align with a person who's on the opposite side of the spectrum, then you wouldn't work together naturally. Is that the argument?
I think there's a lot more factors to it, but it's probably the genesis of making a final decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you look at the customer base, that's why it's so hard to be political, because there are plenty of folks that are my customers that also are in the same boat as me. They don't want to broadcast their politics, but most likely they fit on a very heavy side of the spectrum. But they know too that it's not a good idea to bring it up. If I start saying we're a pro-Trump company, or I'm saying we're an anti-Trump company and we're trying to figure out our 2028 game, I'm probably going to lose like half my customer base in one or the other direction, right? Look at Tesla, right? I mean, they were a great company for a long time until Elon decided to get in politics and then basically killed half his base. At least in terms of fans. I don't, revenue is a whole different story, but in terms of, his popularity, I got cut in half. That's the risk you take. I really just don't want to be part of that. It's so distracting. It's a time suck. I get people, for some people that's a big part of their life. For me, it's a very small part of my life. And I'm more of a global person anyway. I'm like so less about, American politics. I'm more about like, how do we solve issues at a global scale? American policies are just they're kind of boring to me.
American policies just feel like so much publicity stunts at this point.
They have to be. They have to be, because if you're in the middle, you can't get people to listen to you. So you have to polarize and you negotiate back to the middle. So it's no different than you're buying a used car. Actually, let's make it rumors. You're buying a home. So you're going to bid low, but they're going to ask high, or I'm sorry, So the seller is always going to put the maximum price. The buyer is always going to say the lowest price. Both of them are unrealistic. It's no different than the politic from the political end. These numbers are the things that get people in the conversation.
It's their attention,
right? Yeah. And that's just only going to get worse and worse as you get different forms of media exposed in your face. Right, as the internet became more prolific, now we have like the short form videos, and now like everyone's attention span is cut in half. You have to be super polarizing the first 3 seconds of your video. It's the only way. Before, it's a little bit different. Maybe you watch a debate and you make a couple polarizing words, but you're generally safe. No, it doesn't matter. Now it's just say the most extreme thing. It's basically just shoot first and say sorry later. It's basically what it is.
Yeah. So politics is keeping up with, social media trends and the way information is distributed to the public people.
Right. So as a founder, I think I avoid it. I would recommend other folks to just avoid politics, even if you're heavily involved in it. Don't involve it with your customers. Don't involve it with your employees unless it makes you money doing that. If it makes you money, then do the reverse. Just go all in on it.
Just
pick a direction and then stick with it. Because if you get into situations where you're secretly heavily pro-Trump and you seep secret policies in your business, but you don't say it publicly, then things start getting real messy real quick.
Where do you sit though as a business founder, where your personal belief system? Let's say that you're in a position or on some board where you're really publicly open about your politics in your personal life, but you don't want it to affect your business. Can that be
If I'm on the board of directors, most likely it's because I invested in the company. If I invest in the company, what are they going to do? I can say whatever I want.
Right, but I'm saying, let's say that you had to be in a more public position with your politics and your political viewpoints, but you didn't want that to blend with your other business activity.
You can't. The second you're public, you're public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So making the choice to be in a public position for personal benefit is obviously going to affect your business activity.
Yeah. But at least specifically if I'm a board for a company, it's probably because I own 5% of that company. So it doesn't matter what alignment I have. That company depends on my capital. So I'm there to make sure the company doesn't die as a shareholder, as a major shareholder vote anyway. So, in that situation, it doesn't matter. But if it was public, if I had to be forced to be public, which I can only think of two situations where that it is if I decided to do a media brand where, Matt Lowe is its own entity for media,
Mm-hmm.
very similar to what you're doing. That would be
Mm-hmm.
one situation where you do have to probably pick a political spectrum to sit on eventually. You can probably avoid it for a really long time, but if you get big enough, you'll have to pick one.
Sure.
And then the other piece is if I am the public face of a company of a public company. So if I'm it's not always the case for a CEO, but say it is a CEO for a publicly traded company that I have to be involved with a lot of different people. I think probably politics are going to come up in that too. But there's graceful ways to deal with it. You can say like, "Hey, I'm conservative, but I'm in the middle," right? And I think that's what I think everyone has their like, their left middle or right middle. I think that's totally fine. That means like everyone can we can disagree.
I feel like that's a majority though. That's a majority of our population because everybody has made it a radical left or a radical right in the media. But as a people, we are not media and we are sick of seeing the radicalized anything. And we're saying, no, I'm not radically left or radically right. I'm in the middle. I might lean right, but middle, because based on what we have as a display in these media topics and what our politicians are having to do, we are more in the middle because as a people, we're not possibly that radically anything so far which way.
The problem is maybe the 10-15% on both sides make up a big chunk collectively. Not the majority chunk, but they make a big chunk. I would say like 30%. I would say 30% of my customer base that are in America are heavily leaning somewhere, some direction.
Interesting.
Right.
So as a person, they are heavily leaning one way,
right,
and they're happy there. That's
choice. I know plenty of people that are happy there, and they're happy to continue being there.
Interesting.
But this is where it goes into. We might rationalize of trying to say be in the middle. They will infinitely argue that, if you're in the middle, you're not supporting these things and they don't align with your objective. And they're not wrong either. So that's why like, it's just a waste of energy for me to go into. It's like, we can go down the chatter and then figuring out each other, but it's like, it's, I don't know. I feel like there's for the amount of time I spend in that, I can make a better impact somewhere else.
Yeah. It's a distraction to the work that I really want to do.
Right,
when I do get into politics with any type of client or colleague, because I don't enjoy it, it takes away the energy that I would like to give when I'm working and talking about the things that I want to focus on that are going to move us forward. I don't feel like politics, the way I engage with politics and the conversations I have around politics move me forward in the way that I like. I feel like it is a game of what information are we getting from what media outlet and can we even rely on it or not? Because it's such a huge, conglomerate.
It depends too. Like I try to avoid it. Say either of us are in a situation where whether it's an investment or big a customer, but part of the contingency is you have to align yourself politically, right? And that means being bought out. Would you take that too? If I mentioned I'm in the business of making money. I don't know what I do in that situation. What I would say right now is I'm pretty grounded, so I'm not going to be really swayed by money. But what if I'm desperate? What if I really need that money? And if it means I got to just say like, okay, I'm going to pick a political spectrum and stick with it just to make sure I get that one client, even though that one client may not last forever. It's like, just do that and get your payday. I don't know. But I'm not in a desperate situation, so I can't see myself doing that. But if I was, then I feel like the script also flips, right? If say you're drowning in debt, drowning in everything, you really need the cash, or your company is out of runway and you are literally on month 6 and month 7 you're going to die. You get the saving grace from a group, and that group is not politically aligned with anyone, but the big investors are. And they tell them, be like, hey, our vendors have to be approved by our board of directors that, exceed this dollar amount. You have to make sure you're not aligned with these entities at all.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you say? I mean, and that's the tough part.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another reason why I love product companies, because I would be like, just don't buy it if you think it's going to lean somewhere, because it's only a $9 a month product. I'm not sweating bullets, right? But if I'm selling a $10,000, thing and annualize it and say it's with a 20% discount, say I'm, $100,000 deal. Oh, that's a different story then. It's a really different story, right? I can't necessarily just like immediately say reject it, because $100,000 could make a big deal. Yeah, so it depends. That's why I'm in the business I am today.
Yeah. Do you think that by aligning though and taking that and forcing to take a side, even if it's just a year, would working with that group
it kills your integrity though? Kills your integrity.
Yeah.
At the exchange of survival. So I don't know.
I know, right? But you're a product of your environment, right? So if you are surrounding yourself with these clients who you're going to be working heavily with, and the board of directors leans a certain way, isn't that conversation naturally also going to sway you personally to that one side?
It depends. I think a lot of folks that are, at least in the service-based business, they get things coming in all day, all around. I think it depends. What I will say, where politics really does break down is M&As, actually. I have met people who are like two opposite sides of the spectrum, like really heavily, but they somehow, one business buys the other. It makes no sense.
Right.
So people who are heavily political but understand business know that, if there's a lot of money to be made, all of that disappears.
Exactly. Again, it falls back into being a distraction. I view religion, I view politics, I view, personal belief systems. Often, if you can still align and have a good conversation between two humans and get work done, I don't like the distraction, right? I like to have personal conversations with my clients to get to know them better. And the work I do is so deep. I do get to know their belief systems and their, statements on different political structures and religion, but it doesn't personally sway me, because I hear so many different stories left and right in the strategy work I do, that I'm just curious to know other people's human experience. But to be able to sit there and listen to it from a neutral place, if I were ever called to pick a side or make a statement on it or have a stance, like you said, when you're being challenged on that, to have a viewpoint and an opinion, I am not a fan of that, because then I'm having to show up in a place where I don't naturally voice my opinion and have a stance in the work that I'm doing.
If they're not a customer, or eventually be a customer, if they're going to contribute a big part of your revenue, it's totally different. Right? It really is different.
It's true. It's a different story.
The good thing is, I think in my working experience, the people who are heavily political but know not to get it in the way of real money, they tend to be experienced about business themselves. The people who bring it up tend to not work with enough people on the other side. And most of the time, we just don't want to work with that person anyway, because regardless of their political alignment, they're so tunnel vision oftentimes that it gets in the way of also support of I've had customers where they're just like asking for like the millions edge cases. And it's like, that's all they dealt with in their life. So they come to us and be like, why are you guys saying no all the time? It's like, well, because we can, and they just don't understand why. Do
you feel that if you're closed-minded more in your political belief system and how it shapes your work, are you then closed-minded in other areas?
It's probably not mutually exclusive, but in my opinion, it heavily indicates other closed-minded stuff. Not everything, but it usually is. There's some
having that flexibility, right? I think it's more rigid and flexible. And so if you are rigid on your belief systems, religion, politics, social issues, perhaps you are more rigid elsewhere, right? And if you're more flexible, you're more flexible elsewhere. And so for me, I look at that as, is this person a rigid person or flexible? And this is something that I've soften in my work of boundary setting at work and home, and saying, look, I'm going to hold boundaries, but I have flexibility around my boundaries because I am an adaptable person. But I was more rigid for a period of time where I was just really hard and black and white and not giving any grace. And that was me kind of going overboard from having no boundaries to then having way too rigid of boundaries. And now saying, look, there is going to be some grace given because we're human. There's some flexibility around that. But I do think that if there is a rigid stance in some place of your life, it's probably going to be showing up elsewhere too.
Yeah, and this is what one of our guest speakers said before with Christy is you got to live in the gray area, and that's like this is a really good example of that. Is you just got to be really flexible in this area, knowing that sometimes I'm the reverse. I love picking sides, but this is one example where you cannot pick it makes no sense to pick a side. You just got to be adaptable.
I like that. Let's end it there. That was actually a great previous episode callback. It was a great way to wrap it up, living in the gray.
Yeah. She was a great guy. I loved her conversation. So I was like, a lot of the topics I had with, when we were talking with her is like really resonated with me. So
Christy, if you're listening, we loved your conversation.
But yeah, this is great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sam. Well, I think this was a great topic. Definitely love this one. So
yeah, it was a good one. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. See ya.